he do? He might go all the way. He gives it a ride. It's a chance. It'll be a goal. Easy money. Wants to roll on the floor. He can. Come at the moment. Come at the champion.
Well, it wasn't the result we were after, but a week is a long time in footy. This is the Swans Blog's SwansCast, the number one listened to Sydney Swans fans podcast.
Oh, the problem started a lot before the third quarter. I mean, the first half, we were 6-16 in clearances, 420 first possessions. The first quarter was the problem.
In this week's episode, we will be discussing the review of the disappointing 10-point loss to the Adelaide Crows on Friday night, as well as previewing the massive clash against the Geelong Cats at Gdynia Park on Saturday afternoon and everything else Swans related. This is your host, Justin Mitchell, and with me is Stephen Park from the Road to Glory Facebook group. Well, Stephen, I'm back again. I'm still a bit sick. Mate, how are you going after that Friday night game?
Well, Justin, it's great to hear from you again. Sorry it's been so long. And I'm going okay, but I'm still bitterly disappointed, I can tell you that.
Yes, I can completely understand. It was a bit of a disappointing performance, if not, I would say, shocking, just the way that the game started and then it finished.
I agree with you there. I think it's actually one of our worst performances in a couple of years, and I actually have to say that I think it all comes down to our ageing midfield.
Well, our midfield, when you look at some of the players, in particular Heaney, Parker, Mills, who had a bit of a run there for a half, they're in that kind of middle to young age. But then you look at Hanbury, he's 28-29, Kennedy, he's 30-31, Jack is 31, McVeigh is 105. So there's a lot of older players going through. And the thing is, when Hanbury hasn't been fit, he's been injured the whole season so far, and Kennedy's had a couple of really down weeks, and when they're off, they're off. It's like that midfield ball-winning power is gone, and the ball-carrying power is gone. Do you think the boys can bounce back this week?
To be honest, no.
Wow, okay, why is that?
I actually think that unless our midfield can get on top, I actually don't think we can win any game, because I don't think we can play any other style, and I think we're going to get beaten more consistently than what we have done in any previous year. Last year was a bad start. I think this year
was
a shocker.
Oh, look, it's kind of looking a little bit like 2015. We had a really promising start to that year. I wouldn't say cruising, but looking like we're in a reasonably strong position come the bye. And then after that, it just decimated. The forward line was decimated. And one thing that I've noticed a lot is, like, there's been a lot of, I wouldn't say coach abuse, but there's been a lot of negative reflection, I guess is a pretty good way to say it, Stephen.
Yeah.
Looking at the performance of the coaching staff, in particular John Longmire, I've had some pretty animated discussions about that. Entertaining, but animated and reasonable. But the thing that a lot of people might not remember is the fact that we had a massive amount of turnover in the off-season. So, for example, Franku, Playfair, they've left. Dew has gone to the Gold Coast. Kirk is still there, and Longmire. They're the only two coaches that remained. Reese was promoted from the reserves, and he only had, I think, 2 seasons coaching in the reserves. Mm-hmm. Then we've got Cox, who's only got 2 or 3 years' experience as a assistant. Now he's like a senior assistant. Johnson, who retired last year, his first coaching gig. And the Swans are trying to change things up. They're trying to change the way the team plays and they structure up.
Yeah.
It's an interesting kind of transition. And the other thing is, we've got no options to play forward. So we're looking at Tippett, okay? Tippett retired in the off-season. His injury, he wasn't going to come back. Even if he came back, he was going to be limited. And we've actually asked a question about Tippett later on, so we're going to cover that. But then Naismith goes down. It's like, okay, our first 2 ruck choices are down. We're 1 injury away from disaster. And what happens? Sam Reid, mate, he's out for 2.5 months. He won't be back until after the bye. So it's just like, come on. What kind of break can we get? We've only got Franklin. That's it, man. Franklin.
But you've got to look at it this way. We've gone into this season and last season and the season before, knowing this, we're knowing that Tippett is injury prone, knowing that Reid is injury prone. Why have we never thought about doing something different? Why have we put Leah in the forward line who has no idea on what he's doing there? Then to drop him. Why are we not changing it up? Why are we still going to Franklin 43% of the time, more than any other forward in the league? He can't take on 3 players, so why do it constantly?
Absolutely, and I completely agree. We go back to 2016. We had Xavier Richards. We had to swing someone in as a second option as a forward because it was Franklin just won out again. Reid was out for the entire season. Tippett's ankle just kept blowing up. He was constantly injured. He was out for about 10 or 12 weeks. And he came back and every time he played again, he just hurt himself. So it's just this unbelievable situation where we just tried something and it worked. Now, I'm not saying we chuck Harry Marsh in the forward line. He's going to try. You're going to get 100% effort. There's no doubt about that. But I was a bit disappointed that Ali at least didn't get to retain his spot in the side and Harry Marsh came in.
Yep.
And, it's got a bit of interesting feedback from the player ratings in particular because I was pretty critical of Marsh's performance. You look at his stat line, he was pretty impressive as far as stats go. I think it was the 3rd or 4th highest in the team. He had about 24, 25 disposals. He had a pretty good rebounding game. I'm just having a quick look now at his stats. He actually had 24. The thing is, he had 17 uncontested. That's fine. Biggest problem was he was beaten by his opponents almost 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So even McGovern, who couldn't mark the ball, even his fingers were butterfingers. It's like he was handling soap. He was still able to mark on him.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want to have a crack at him too much, but defensively, he wasn't good enough. And I'm not saying Aaliyah would have been better. It's just one of those things you just got to look at. Like, is it worth it? Would it have been worth keeping Aaliyah in because we didn't have any NEFL games? There was no reserve games. He wasn't getting any match practice.
But Harrison Marsh didn't come in to replace Aaliyah. Harrison Marsh come in to replace Nick Newman. Why you would drop Nick Newman for Harrison Marsh, I have no idea. Gary Rowan replaced Aaliyah because they took the forward position of each other. I had no issue with that. But what I did have an issue with was having Nick Newman dropped, who was a consistent player last year, and then all of a sudden it turns around and he can't get a game this year. Is there something going on there? Has there been some news? Is he leaving to go back to South Australia at the end of the year?
Well, that's the rumour. Nothing's come out. Scuttlebutt is that there's something going on. That might be the case. The thing is, when he lined up against the Dogs, his first half was pretty poor. He certainly improved, but he wasn't very good.
No.
And even in his first hit out, he wasn't very good. So he might not be hitting his KPIs. He might be well down on those, what the coaches and staff would measure him on. And they're saying, you're going to have to lift your work rate. Kind of like Mitch Morton, right? He kicked like bags at 10-12 in the reserves, but he wasn't doing the team things, the team ethos, that sort of thing. But anyway, we'll talk about that a bit more as we review the game.
You were talking about the forward line. Why is it we're not structuring up? So we've gone to having 1 tall and 5 smalls in our forward line, yet we still consistently do the same thing, which is bomb it long. We kick it long every single time when we've got 1 tall and 5 smalls. Why are we not adopting a Richmond model who plays Jack Riewoldt and 5 smalls and chip it around to get to your best option? They don't ever bomb it long. Hawthorn, they don't ever bomb it long into Jared Roughhead because they know he's going to get beaten every time. They chip it around the outside and then hit it up. North Melbourne very rarely bomb it long to Ben Brown. They work the ball around. It's very interesting that I find that we still have this consistent method. We've got 3 talls down there and we bomb it long every time. We don't have those 3 talls anymore.
No, we don't. And I think the midfielders are a bit to blame there. Longmire said after the game that once the first quarter was out of the way, the players were essentially chasing the game. They had to be reactive, and And their play in the end, despite the fact they're up, I think, 14 or 16 inside 50s at the end of the match, they were still chasing the match. They were still behind in the match, despite them getting on top in certain statistical categories. But I'll tell you what, we'll talk about that after we go through our normal stuff at the start of the show.
Yep.
So, Stephen, I believe you have a hero and a villain of the week for us. Could you please give us your hero of the week?
Okay, my hero of the week is Dean Towers. The reason he's my hero of the week, it's not just based on 1 week. It's actually based on a body of work that I have seen over the first 5 rounds. This is a guy that I actually said should have been traded out at the end of 2016. I said he was a waste of space and we should have got rid of him. Last year, he showed some signs that he was actually improving. This year, I'd actually go as far to say that he is probably in our top 5 players for what he is actually doing. He's playing really well. Yeah, he's playing.
He's certainly
really
one
well.
of the first on the team sheet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's actually playing really well in the ruck. He's playing as an extra midfielder around the ground, and I actually would say he's actually playing better than Kennedy and Hanbury. Probably not Parker, but Kennedy and Hanbury, he's playing better than both.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hanbury is his 3rd game back, and he looked like he was having a bit of, or 4th game back, he looked like he was having a bit of an upward trend, and then that was not good. He was very, very poor in my opinion. Look, I love that. Dean Towers, he's becoming a bit of a favourite on our show, up there with Callum Sinclair.
Yep.
We're talking about him literally every week now, and how important he is. He doesn't get a lot of tap-outs, but what he can do in the ruck, and the fact that he can compete and makes it competitive, he doesn't allow easy hit-outs, and he can tackle and he can run. He is very important to the team at the moment.
Yes.
Now, you have a villain of the week. Let's hear it.
My villain of the week's going to get a lot of criticism, but it's actually
controversial, I know that.
It is. My villain of the week is none other than not so much our selection panel, but our selection committee in the fact of who we actually pick up each year.
So you're talking about the recruiting team?
Yes, I am talking about our recruiting team. The reason I'm actually saying this is I want to list these people. Billy Hartung, running half-back that we could have used. Majak Daw was put up for trade. We could have actually picked him up. He would have actually been a great backman after what I've seen over the last 3 weeks. We let Tom Mitchell go because we wouldn't give him more money. That's all it was. He was willing to stay. We didn't even, and the biggest one for me is a person who got a 1-year contract and will absolutely dominate us this week, I'm afraid, is Daniel Menzel. How good would he be sitting in our forward line with Buddy right now?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised by that, actually, the fact that they let him go on the trade. Yeah. I was shocked. And I was even more surprised no one even took a punt on him.
That's right.
You would have got him absolutely nothing, literally.
Well, he's actually on the base wage. So if he's on the base wage for a 1-year contract, why wouldn't you pick him up? It's like, not picking up a Gary Ablett. Like, I'm not putting him in the same category, but Daniel Menzel is a bloody magnificent forward, and just because he's got knee injuries, hell, our whole entire club is full of injury-prone people.
Yeah, we're not quite made of glass anymore, but you do have a pretty good point.
And,
Look,
and not only that, just before I finish, with Daniel Menzel, what a story that would have been if we'd picked up Daniel Menzel and then AJ actually came back and played seniors this year.
That would have been a magnificent story. And look, he's actually 5th in the Coleman medal at the moment. He's kicked 15 goals from 5 games, which is absolutely terrific. Mm-hmm. Ben Brown's finally taken the lead. He kicked a bag on the weekend and he's one ahead of Franklin, so Franklin's 2nd with 18. Menzel's pretty much been out of those players. I think he's been one of the players, or basically Geelong signed him again, so he's one of the signings of the season so far. Yeah,
that's right.
Now, I have a hero, and my hero is Zach Jones. So he returned to the side after 2 weeks out through injury. He's a little bit short of fitness and form, but for 3/4 of the match, he looked like the only player capable of playing in the midfield and playing it adequately well.
Yep.
I thought he was terrific. He bounced back very well. He was at times influential. He had 27 disposals and 5 marks. Now, he didn't rack up big clearance numbers, but he picked up rebound 50s, he picked up tackles, and he picked up inside 50s, and he kicked a beautiful goal. I believe it was the first one of the match as well. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed his performance. I thought he was terrific.
I agree. I think he's actually a very good player. The only concern or the only weakness for me in his game is his disposal efficiency. I think that is the area that lets him down. Not so much his hand passing. His hand passing is beautiful. It's his kicking.
Now, he went at 77.8% on the weekend, so that's about as good as he's done for a very long time. He is known to just hack the ball and it goes nowhere or goes anywhere, but I thought he was terrific. He was led the midfield brilliantly for a long period of time and was one of the reasons why we were still in with a chance.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'd actually totally agree. He was actually very good because the rest of our midfield was very down.
Yeah, it was. Now, I do have a villain, and it is a non-Swans related one, but I think a lot of people can agree with this one. It is none other than former Roos forward Lindsay Thomas. Now, playing in his first game of the season for Port Adelaide on the weekend against Geelong, he's come on, he's kicked a goal, and a minute later he's just knocked the lights out of Scott Selwood, and he is certainly looking at a bit of time on the sidelines for that hit. Now, did you actually catch that?
I did catch it, and I thought it was absolutely disgraceful. But I've got something to say around those hits around the head. Now, his is a bit different because his actually was a full-on premeditated attempt. But
yeah, he certainly lined him up.
Yeah, but I've actually got something about the concussions. I've actually got a theory that I reckon would actually work really well around that, if you don't mind me explaining it. So my theory is this. Instead of actually suspending a guy for a week if someone gets a head hit, what should happen is if someone intends to bump, fine. If someone is knocked out and has to have a concussion test, that's fine. So they go off for 20 minutes, right? And then they get tested. What should happen is if the person who bumps hits them in the head and the person who gets bumped has to go off, then the person that bumped should go off as well. So they both sit there for the 20 minutes.
Sin bin, pretty much. You're talking about a sin bin or a yellow card.
If that player then is ruled out for the rest of the game, the player that did the bump is ruled out for the rest of the game as well. If it's not an intentional bump, if it's in the act of play, then that's what should happen. There should be no suspension for the next week. It should just even out the teams. So that means if say North Melbourne lose a player, or say Sydney
Higgins,
lose a player,
for example.
Yeah, so Sydney lose a player this week, and through concussion, like when Mills got hit, then Bug for Melbourne last year, he should have been sat on the bench for the rest of the game as well. So sin bin him.
Fortunately, in our case last year, he pretty much played like he was sitting on the bench for the rest of the game. Yep. But I completely agree. It's something that has been raised by the AFL before as a discussion paper about how they kind of adjudicate and punish players on the field. It opens up a whole can of worms, though. And I did umpire for 6 years. It's very difficult to kind of police that. The best you can do is yellow card them, and if they continue carrying on, you red card them, but a red card's a very serious thing. The biggest difference between a Lindsay Thomas hit and the one on Higgins later on that afternoon, or the following day, was Lindsay Thomas lined him up. Yeah, and he came in and he hit him. Yeah. And he hit him hip to head. The Higgins one was the guy pretty much just stood there and Higgins ran straight into him and it was a head clash and he just knocked himself out essentially. So, yeah, look, that's a whole new can of worms. It's a topic that we can spend an entire podcast on, but look, we don't have enough time for that. We'd be here for hours, mate. So let's get back on to the Sydney and Adelaide discussion. So, Stephen, midfielders, they weren't flash, were they?
No, I actually think we need to do something about it. I actually would be starting Joey Kennedy as a forward this week. I'd actually be starting my midfield like this. I'd be starting with Zach Jones, Isaac Heaney, and Callum Mills as our midfield.
Well, they did that for the second half, and with Hanbury starting off the wing,
yep.
Parker starting off a flank. He rotated through the middle, and Kennedy was playing almost centre half forward, and he rotated through the middle as well. We actually started to win a lot more ball.
Yep.
I don't know why that change had to happen for them to start winning contests, but they did.
The problem we've got is that Hanbury, Parker, and Kennedy are all in and under players. That's great when it's working. But if it's not working, they've got no one to feed the ball out to and run. That's where we're in this problem.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Ollie Florent would be the player that we could actually teach that to. But now he seems to be being drawn into this in and under play. We haven't got your Lewis Jetta. We haven't got someone who's on the outskirts of the packs ready to run and take off. We've just completely forgotten about that type of style of play.
Yeah, look, maybe Florent's going to fill that role, and perhaps Hayward. Certainly younger players who are recruited in the off-season, you're looking at Stoddard and Ling. They're certainly candidates going forward. I wouldn't say Newman was that kind of player because he never had the leg speed, but he was certainly an outside player. Yep. Jones, for quite a few years, was an outside player. Rowan, if he can get up closer to the packs, he's an outside player. But we're not talking about hugely experienced players here.
No.
Dean Towers can play inside and outside, and he can do it quite well. But again, they're not hugely experienced players. They don't really have that Isaac Smith body or anything like that. The main culprits of the Malays in the midfield were certainly the most senior players, which is probably the most disappointing aspect. Mm-hmm. Callum Mills got his wish. He played almost the entire second half in midfield. I'm not going to say he had a particularly great game, but he wasn't particularly poor. No. He was certainly better than the players that rotated in before him. And the other thing was Sam Jacobs was always going to beat Callum Sinclair. But I thought Callum Sinclair did okay in the end. He picked up 11 disposals, about 50% disposal efficiency. But he had 32 hitouts and a couple of really good pressure acts, and he had 10 1%ers, which is essentially pressure acts, smothers, spoils, etc., so forth. So I thought he did quite well in that aspect.
Now, you know I love Callum Sinclair, but I'm going to state this now. We will not win a game when we come up against a decent ruckman. And the reason I'm saying
that is an issue. I agree. Because
the issue we've got, Callum Sinclair may get some hit-outs, but the way he actually has to do it is he's actually just belting the ball. He can't do the tap ruckman stuff against a decent ruckman. Whereas Sam Jacobs was able to just tap it straight down to his midfield. Even that midfield of Adelaide was one of the worst in the league. That was basic sandful midfield.
Yeah, it was pretty short. It was pretty short, to be honest.
But he just fed it to them all game long. You know, Sinclair had some good hit-outs, and I'm not doing anything because you know how much I love Callum Sinclair. He's probably one of my favourite players. But the issue is, when he comes up against a good ruckman, the only option he's got is to belt the ball forward. That's it.
Well, he has a really good leap on him, and he can get up really high, and he can contest the ball really high. His biggest problem is when the other ruckmen bring it closer together, they scrap, and they make it a bit of a wrestle, then he's out of his element.
Yeah.
He's more of a forward than a ruckman, but he's pretty much the only choice we've got at the moment.
Yeah, but that's why he was recruited.
Yeah, well, he was recruited to be that forward role, to pinch hit, essentially, the pinch hit for Naismith and Tippett. Yeah. And as it is, Naismith is ACL. He's not coming back until next year. Probably, I don't know, the end of the first third of next year. Tippett's not coming back at all.
No.
He's pretty much the solo ruck. We've got no choice. I thought he's done well so far this season, but we're kind of stuck with what we've got.
Yeah.
I thought our defenders, some of them are a bit iffy, but for the most part, I thought our defence kind of held out okay in the first sort of two quarters, despite the fact our midfield was completely uncompetitive and gave up absolutely nothing. Well, gave no help at all. They won nothing. They didn't even get their hands on the ball.
Yeah, I agree. One person that I think possibly needs to be looked at and possibly completely change his role or be dropped is Kieran Jack. I just think I'm not seeing where he's fitting anymore because he's not really rotating through the midfield very much, but he's not able to do a great deal on the forward line because of the way our midfield are kicking it into the forward line. It's not helping.
Look, he didn't have a good game. I wrote about it in the player ratings. I certainly stuck the knife in, and to be honest, I honestly thought that the knifing was a bit deserved. I don't want to have a go at him because he's a great player and a great person, and he's a stalwart of the club, and he's been around for a long time. But the problem is, when you're having 11 disposals at 50% efficiency with 6 turnovers,
Jeez.
You're a liability. You are an actual liability. In the end, I gave him a 1, and I think he, apart from that goal, he hurt the team more than he actually gave. I certainly put it up on Facebook and Twitter at halftime, and I've certainly blogged about it and discussed it after the match. Mm-hmm. But and certainly Longmire discussed this at the post-game press conference. Rampy led the disposals for the Swans at halftime, followed by Lloyd. So it was Rampy 15, Lloyd 14, Smith 13. And Mills 13. That's 4 defenders leading the disposals for the Swans.
Scary, isn't it?
Oh, it gets even more scary. Kennedy 6, Parker 4, Hanbury 8, and Jack 5. Jones was the best of the midfield group with 9, and Heaney had 5 or 6. But they were 5 or 6 quality disposals. Yeah. That they trailed just about in every major statistical category. They were -5 centre clearances, -6 clearance, -4 clearances, -6 inside 50s, -13 contested possessions, -9 hitouts, and more importantly, -16 first possessions. They got absolutely smashed in first possessions. They couldn't win the ball whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
it's really bad, and the problem that I have with this is it still then comes down to, if our midfield is not winning the game, we can't win. And it's as simple as that. Because when our midfield's down, it puts way too much pressure on our defence, but it also puts so much pressure on our offence because our forwards can't do anything because of the way the ball's coming in. And they can't.
And not only that, for 2.5 quarters, the ball wasn't even going in the forward line.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the way they kicked the... Now, tell me something. Do you think Buddy's a good mark?
On the lead.
On the lead. That's exactly right.
Or if he can push his player under the ball.
Yeah. He's not...
That's about it.
He's not your stand-up, take a mark in a pack type of player.
He's not a Barry Hall or a Matthew Lloyd or anything like that.
Why do we continue to play to him like that?
Well, we kicked to Sam Reid like that for years because he was able to bring the ball to the deck.
Yeah. With Buddy,
and they're kicking to him like he's Sam Reid.
Yeah, that's right. But the problem with Buddy is, if it's kicked to him like that, it slips straight through his fingers, out to the back of the pack, it's picked up, and it's run out straight away. And the Adelaide did that constantly.
I looked. The setup in the forward line was not great for the first half, and even parts of the second half, it just wasn't great. I honestly thought that Sydney looked the most threatening when they actually played Towers on the ruck against Jacobs, and Towers actually won a couple of hitouts.
Yeah.
But they played Sinclair out of the goal square.
Yeah.
That was when Sydney looked like not only could they get a mark, but they could bring it to ground and lock it in the forward line. I couldn't believe it took almost 3 quarters for that change to happen. And it's something that we discussed last week in the show that we felt that Heather and I felt that Aaliyah had to stay in the team because he had to provide an option up forward.
No, you've got a better option. Someone who can actually take a mark and play forward, but we're not doing it. Gary Rowan is 2 centimetres shorter than Buddy. Gary Rowan has blistering speed. Gary Rowan is actually the same height as Tony Lockett. Why can we not play him as a 1-out full forward, have Buddy playing as a mobile centre-half forward, doing what he did the week before when Sam Reid was there, and actually have Gary Rowan patrolling the 50. He doesn't leave the 50 because he's got enough speed, and he just patrols it, and then we work around him. And because he's got great hands. I actually don't like Gary Rowan, but he's got great hands, and he's got blistering speed, and he could actually do the job.
The biggest problem is he's not a great contested mark. So he is not the kind of player you'd leave one out in the goal square and just go long and high to him.
Didn't he win a game off his own boot in a contested mark?
Oh, he won 2 last year.
Yeah.
He won 2 of them off his own boot.
Yeah, there you go.
But that was more of a kind of a fluke kick to his good side where he's able to push his defender under the ball.
Yep.
But if he's playing against Lever or Kelly or someone like that, I wouldn't expect him to win many contests.
I actually think, but it wouldn't matter if he won them, as long as he could actually bring the ball to ground. And then you had people like Papley or Hewitt or anyone who was coming through, even Jack coming through, who could actually crumb off it. Because there is no point in the world having Buddy playing at full forward. It's not his.
Yeah, if we're gonna kick like that, I agree. It was pretty bad. Now, some of the stats were a bit damning after the match, and certainly Longmire, he wasn't very happy about some of the stats, and he thought they were quite misleading. So the one thing that he discussed was the inside 50 count. At halftime, the Swans were behind in inside 50s. It was -6, and even when they got it in, it wasn't looking pretty. The second half, they got 38 inside 50s to, I think it was 16. They locked it in the third quarter, and all they could do was kick 2 goals. And then Adelaide just kicked 4 goals in a row, and that was it.
And that's the issue that we have. I was reading an article today by David King, and he was saying about how our midfield hasn't won a single match this year, hasn't come out on top in a single match this year.
No, contested possessions are down, tackles are down, clearances are down. Everything's it's interesting. Everything's down.
Yep.
I just wonder whether or not that's a side effect of the new coaches and a new game plan and things like that.
But is it a new game plan? Like,
I think it is.
But I couldn't say that there's actually been any real evidence of anything that is new about the way we are playing. We still rely on our back line to slingshot it out. We still bomb it long into the forward line. There is nothing different about that from previous 3 years. The only thing that is really down is our contested possession and our tackling pressure. Like, our pressure has gone nowhere. It's basically disappeared.
Yeah, it has gone down. I think if you look at the West Coast game, for example, there was more of a press happening. There was more of a zonal defence. So it's something I've noticed Longmire has tried to introduce over the last couple of years as a zonal setup to move away from one-on-one, man-on-man. It didn't work against Adelaide. It didn't work against the Dogs, and they went back to man-on-man, 18 versus 18 against the Dogs, and they snuck away with a match. Yeah. But against Adelaide, every time they switched to that, Adelaide just punished them. So they had to keep switching back to loose defence. It takes
out people by playing zone, it takes out what Grundy's good at. It takes out what Nick Smith's good at, which is beating your opponent. That's what they're good at. They're too slow to actually play zone, our back line.
Yeah. Look, I would agree with that, and especially if you look at some of the free kicks that were given to Walker and Jenkins. Marsh was hanging on to Jenkins 2 or 3 times. Grundy was caught. It was not a good game for them. No, it wasn't a good game for them, unfortunately. Rowan kicked a goal in the third quarter. I believe it was the third quarter, his first goal.
Yep.
And all the guys got around him. He got a standing ovation from the crowd. It was a great sight to see.
No, it was amazing. It brought a tear to my eye, I must say. Now, personally, I think he's a really good bloke. I don't think a lot of the times over the past 2 years he's actually deserved his spot in the team, because I think he's a flash-in-the-pan player. He does 1 or 2 brilliant things every couple of weeks, but he's not a consistent player, but that was a special moment, and the fact that he actually played so well after what he's been through was really good.
Yeah, it really was, and it was terrific for him. Certainly celebrated for him as well. I really liked what he did, and he did have a bit of an impact on the game as well, and snagged 2 good goals. The one thing that really irked me about the omissions, again, as I said before, there was no Neefel on the weekend, so players like Newman and Lear, obviously Newman's out of form, and Ali was unfit, or at least still building his fitness, because they didn't play. They didn't get any game time. They didn't improve their position. So Malikan's pretty much expected back. I don't know about this game, but certainly next game.
Yeah,
he might come back for Geelong. Ali's not going to get back in the team. Not for another month or so until he gets a few more games under his belt, which I find really disappointing. There's still a spot for him. I think he should be in the team, but it's just, I wasn't really happy with that selection.
Yeah, I think if we're going to play the way we're playing, what we need to do is play a 7-man defence. And we need another tall in there to do that. And I think what you do is then you bring a Lear in, and then you run it off your back line, and then you play with your 5-man forward line with Rowan and Buddy. And I think then you have Jack, Papley, and probably I would actually play Joey
Hayward
Kennedy.
or Florent?
No, I wouldn't actually. I'd play them. I'd play Hayward rotating with Kennedy, and I'd play Kennedy and Hayward off the wing. I'd be playing Florent on the other wing as a permanent winger.
Kennedy might be a bit too slow for a wing, but I do understand what you mean. That might be something that we can consider for the Geelong game.
Yeah.
Because we do have the Geelong at Cardinia Park coming up. And it is... a lot of people might be looking at this game and they might be thinking to themselves, oh, crap, I've got Geelong at Cardinia Park. Now, I have a couple of stats for you. I think you might be surprised by this. I know the listeners are certainly going to be surprised by this. But if we have a look at the head-to-heads, they're actually in Sydney's favour since 2011. So, the clubs have played 6 times at Cardinia Park, and it's 3-3. Sydney lead the head-to-head since 2011, 7-6. So they've had some massive wins, some really big wins. Sydney had beaten Geelong the previous 3 times before the semi-final loss last year, and 2 of those wins were at Cardinia Park.
Yep.
Now, the most impressive thing is the Geelong. Everyone knows Geelong holds a very imposing record at Cardinia Park. It's a fortress.
Yep.
But they had won 18 of their last 20 matches at Cardinia Park.
Let me guess. The Swans are the 2-1.
Yep.
Lost.
The Swans are the only team to beat them since round 16, 2015, when Geelong started that streak. And our 2 wins have been by 46 and 38 points. So they're not like little scrappy ones. They are big wins.
Yeah.
It is a very impressive and imposing record. And that first win was round 22 or round 23. That one was McVeigh's, when McVeigh missed through his daughter.
Yeah.
So it's a very imposing ground, but the Swans should hold no fear going to Cardinia Park.
No, I think it actually, the ground, Cardinia Park, have you ever been to Cardinia Park?
Yeah, I was there last year. It's very narrow,
it suits the Swans
you can choke the ground very easily.
Yeah. It suits the Swan style of play very, very well. And that's the good thing about it.
The $1 million question for the week ahead, and I'm not even sure myself, but who plays forward with Franklin?
Well, as I said, I would be playing Franklin as a centre-half, a roving centre-half forward, just like Wayne Carey used to play, and I'd be playing Gary Rowan out of the goal square running up to the 50, and he does not leave the 50 unless the opposition have got the ball and his man's chasing. That's it. I would be keeping him one out down there, and I'd have Papley, Jack, Hewitt, Parker, and everyone else roving off Rowan coming full steam ahead, because when he gets it motoring, no one can catch him, and he's got a great set of hands. And the good thing about it...
He does on a lead, yeah.
Yeah, the good thing about it is Buddy's going to get back to getting his 20, 22, 23, 24, 25 possessions, and he'll still kick his 3 or 4 goals. But it takes away the predictability of kick it to Buddy, kick it to Buddy, kick it to Buddy.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, is that he has to get involved in the game. And he'd had literally no impact in the game whatsoever.
That's right.
Against Adelaide. He had 5 disposals at half-time, and he kicked his only goal in the match in the second quarter, and that was from a horrific turnover, and he pegged it from 70, and it took a bit of a fluky bounce. But that wasn't even, for me, that wasn't even the play of that game. The play of that game was Papley and his Rewalt-esque spoil.
you know what the play of the game for me was? Buddy had just kicked that goal straight away out of the ruck. They kicked it to Tex, and what did Tex do? That's what
kicked an even bigger goal.
Especially after the banter.
Gave the fist bump.
Yeah, especially after the banter Buddy was giving him as he was running in.
Oh, mate, I don't know who you're supporting, Sydney or Adelaide, but Jesus, that was a painful sight, to be honest.
It was terrible, wasn't it? And the worst thing is, like, I hate lots of teams in the AFL, but the team I hate the most and the team I cannot stand is Adelaide. I just cannot like anything about them at all.
Must be that mustache. That mustache is atrocious.
Yeah. And I can't stand Tex as a captain, and I can't stand him as a player. And then we've just played him back into form.
Yeah, we did. Same with Jenkins.
Yeah.
Jenkins kicked 3 goals from snaps from like 20 metres out, which was the most bizarre goal kicking I've ever seen. But he got 3 goals, and we made him look good again.
Yeah. But anyway,
Now,
back to the forward line. Gary Rowan, Gary Rowan, Gary Rowan. Yeah.
you don't like the idea of Aaliyah coming back in?
No.
Maybe one of the younger players coming out?
No.
Fair enough.
No.
Now, a bit of news coming out of Geelong. I don't know if it's just Chinese whispers or mind games or anything like that, but Gary Ablett might be available this week.
I heard that too on the rumour mill, but I don't think so. I honestly don't reckon he'll get up. I reckon it'll at least be another week or two, because originally they said 4 to 6. It hasn't been 4 to 6 yet.
No, he's still listed as another 2 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
It's amazing. If you go to the AFL site, the injury list, which is afl.com.au/news/injury-list, he's still listed as 2 to 5 weeks. So I think it's just a bit of shenanigans from Geelong's side.
Yeah.
I can't see him coming back.
No, me either.
But if he does come back, and if Sydney produces another midfield performance like they did on the weekend, it is not going to be pretty. It is going to be a pretty dreadful experience down in Geelong.
Is it true that Selwood's out?
Which one?
Joel.
Scott Selwood copped a head knock.
Maybe he's out, but I'm sure I read somewhere. Yeah.
Look, the last time he played him down there, Scott Selwood was one of the best on ground. He had a fantastic game.
Yeah, Scott Selwood can play. He's not as good as his brother, but he can play.
He is a good player. You'd have him in most teams, to be honest.
Mm.
So, yeah, he has been banned for 1 week for having a crack at Lindsay Thomas after he knocked his brother out. Fair enough.
Yep.
Well, Scott Selwood will probably play, but Joel Selwood,
out.
naughty boy. And Dangerfield copped a $2,000 fine as well. So, naughty boys.
Mm. Fairly full of match, though.
Yeah, a bit of spite in that one. And Joel Selwood got booed after the siren when he was awarded the medal.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd say fair play to the crowd, but in this instance, that crowd was pretty disgraceful. Now, this is going to be interesting for our matchups, because I actually had Selwood going head-to-head with Parker or Heaney, but he's not in the side anymore. So Franklin, Kolajasny, I think he's looking like about the only option.
Yep, I agree with you there.
That without Taylor and Henderson, they're really quite desperate in defence.
Yep.
Now, Dangerfield plays. If he goes forward, I reckon Smith should take him, like he did in the semi-final.
Oh, I don't know. I just think Dangerfield's too quick for Smith. To be honest.
No, well, that's what I thought last year as well.
Mm.
I thought Rampy was the better matchup, but he gave Rampy an absolute
Town,
bath
yeah,
in the
I know.
first quarter and a bit. He basically did a Lloyd to Leo Barry.
Yeah.
It was that kind of, job. It was a thrashing.
Yeah.
So Smith kept him goalless, I think, after that point, and almost disposalless for about 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, the problem we've got is Nick Smith's a great player if our midfield is going well, if they've got pressure in the midfield. If there's no pressure in the midfield, Nick Smith gets shown up because his speed just isn't there.
Well, that's the thing. I think he's underrated because he used to play on Rioli, and Rioli used to live in his back pocket.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know.
And he used to give him an absolute bath every single time. It was incredible, especially that 2012 season.
Yeah.
And Rioli was one of the fastest players in the league. So
yeah, that's true.
now, if he goes in the midfield, do you think he'll pick him up and roll with him?
I actually don't reckon he will. I reckon they'll let Dangerfield go. I think it'd be silly to tag him, especially the way our midfield is playing, because you're limiting your midfield then.
Well, they're going to be without Joel Selwood. Scott Selwood's maybe, depending on injury and things like that. But you would expect them to play. Duncan's back in form. They've got some good players rolling through their midfield now. And Ablett's a maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't think you go a hard tag. You think they just go head-to-head and let him do what he does best.
Yeah. Yep, that's what I...
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep, that's what I think. I just don't see the point. I think the way our midfield played last week, if you actually go a hard tag, you're cutting down your options in a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we can afford it at this particular point. And let's face it, if Selwood's out, possibly Scott Selwood will be out as well. Ablett's out. Their midfield's weakened a fair bit anyway.
Yeah, look, Duncan is another option, but you're looking at maybe Jones or even Heaney can just go head-to-head with that.
That's right.
And Jones has done a pretty good job before previously. Last year, actually, did a really good job on Sloane for parts of the match. And Crouch and whatnot, and obviously one of the Crouches got off the lead and Sloane had a pretty big impact, but for that period of time that was running with him, he actually did a fairly good job on him.
Yeah. Question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you think Hewitt's going?
Not good.
Yeah.
I think he's had that one good game this season, and other than that, I think he's been pretty much passenger.
Yeah.
And I said this, I think, in the play ratings last week, not the Adelaide game, but the Western Bulldogs game.
Yeah.
My point was that if he's getting beaten by his opponent, that's fair enough, that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's not winning his own ball or kicking goals, there really isn't a spot in the side for him.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. Insane.
So he either has to play more forward or more midfield, and he has to win his ball.
Yeah.
He can't just... now, that could be just a structure thing, a team thing. Maybe he is hitting those KPIs, doing tackles and stuff like that. But there was one game where he's had almost no defensive pressure at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's really dropped off. But in saying that, I'd prefer to have him in the team than, say, someone like Kieran Jack at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. He did finish fifth in the Bob Skilton medal. I think it was fifth last year. So he's definitely got the ability. It's just maybe he's picking up more defensive players and they're, having a crack at him as well. So Grundy and Hawkins, so they're going to renew hostilities, depending whether or not Malakin comes back. Even Aaliyah could come back in, depending. I would fear Marsh on Hawkins. That would be a matchup I would never want to see.
I'd be dropping Marsh. They won't, but I'd be dropping him.
I would definitely consider it. Like we said earlier in the show, very good from a rebounding perspective, and he had a goal assist, and some of his stats are actually quite good from a rebounding perspective. He had 5 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, a goal assist, and 517 metres gained with his 24 disposals. The only problem was, as a defender, he was the third tall. He just got pantsed literally every single time he was against anyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, Hawkins played, or he's going to play. He's an option, obviously. You got Tim Kelly and James Parsons, Menzel, Haaland, Smith, even Stanley can be chucked up forward. So they've got a lot of options.
Nick Smith will take Menzel, I would assume. I think Nick Smith...
No, I would probably put Rampy on him.
You reckon?
I would look at Rampy.
I think it's a waste of time having Rampy playing on someone. I think you lose his impact. He's actually better when we play the 7-man defence, and he's actually the goalkeeper, the player that floats. That's his best.
The thing is, if Marsh plays on him, he's too good of a forward for Marsh. There's no question about that.
Yeah. That's why I think Nick Smith. Because if you don't play Nick Smith on Menzel, I don't think there's a great matchup for Nick Smith.
Parfitt. You probably have to take Parfitt or Haaland Smith.
Yeah. But neither of
even
them.
Menegola.
Yeah. But I don't think any of those guys, you're wasting Nick Smith by playing on him. Menzel's probably about the right size to be playing with Nick Smith. Because he's not your major forward.
Well,
he's not your tall forward.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Because Dangerfield, they might play Dangerfield forward again. And if he does, that's a matchup I want for Smith.
Yeah. He's
about the best player for him. So it's going to be interesting. Marsh might keep his spot in the team regardless of whether or not we want him in there.
Yeah.
So, look, how do you expect this match to sort of unfold down at the Kittenery, not the Cattery, the Kittenery?
I think that it will be... Again, I think Cats will come out and take a very sizable lead in the first quarter and we'll be fighting back again. I'm not going to say that we won't win, but I think our first quarter will be poor again. That's all I'm going to say on it.
No, that's fair enough. Look, at that stadium, we either win big or we lose big.
Yeah.
There's no in between. There's no narrow margins.
Yeah.
If you look at AFL tables, you'll see that we're either winning by 6 goals or losing by 6 goals. So the start is going to be absolutely important. As we showed last year in the semi-final, we started very poorly, and they just ran out winners, pretty easy winners in the end. Now, going to go and look at our responses to the question for the listeners that we put out. So the question, Stephen, and I wonder if you actually replied to this one yourself. Let me know if you did. The question was, should we bring back Tippett? Now, Stephen, did you actually put a response in for this one?
No, I was planning to, but I decided against it because it wouldn't have been such a great response.
No. Look, some of the responses ranged from mild, lukewarm support to incredulity. I took a snapshot of some of the responses, some of the more balanced responses at least. So Corey from Facebook said, we're definitely missing another key forward, so we're not. Clayton from Facebook said, why bring back a bloke that's injury prone? Give one of our kids a go and see if they have what it takes. It's a fair point. You're looking at someone like Aaliyah, Amadi, McCartan, or even Cameron. Michael from Facebook said, Tippett's not the answer. Put some faith in Towers, Aaliyah, or one of our young blokes. Amy from Facebook as well said he retired because he couldn't play due to injuries. It's not an option even if we wanted it, which I'm not saying we do. And Kirby from Twitter said, is he even available? Has he been training? What about putting Kennedy forward? Give him a break from midfield. We need to get creative. Absolutely 100% agree with you there, Kirby. Some of the other responses were a bit more colourful. Certainly the language used.
Yep.
And there wasn't a lot of support out there for old Tipchuck. So, look, he's still on the list and the Swans could bring him back if we need to. Which it's looking like we might do at some point if he's fit. Good call and bad call from the previous week, mate. So on last week's show, I had Heather on with me, and we were both quite positive about the Swans' chances against Adelaide. Unfortunately, that did not unfold the way that we or anyone else expected. So I'll start off with Heather's predictions. Her first one was Franklin 5+ goals. No. I don't think anyone would have expected what happened. Nick Smith to have a day out, his opponent no influence. Now, I'm willing to give this one a tick because I thought he did pretty well. What do you think?
I thought he was okay. I'd give him a tick, but I wouldn't say he set the world on fire.
Nah, soft tick. We'll give it a soft tick. And the last one was Tom Papley, 3 goals. Unfortunately, not quite. He only kicked the one. Now, I had Parker 2 goals. Maybe I should have said 2 disposals because I had just wrote a 2 next to him, but I'm sure that was goals. Swans half-time, full-time lead. They didn't lead for much of that match.
No.
About 5 minutes in the first quarter. And I nearly snagged this one, but for the Lions to bounce back.
Yeah, that was close.
That was close. They got absolutely embarrassed down at the MCG the week before, and they gave it a fair shake. 5 points. Not far off.
All right.
It took a bit of magic in the end for them to save it. Now, Stephen, if you could you please provide us with your 3 predictions for the week ahead?
Okay. Prediction number 1. Carlton will beat the Western Bulldogs.
On
the Friday night stage. Prediction number 2.
Oh, they've been dreadful on Friday night, mate.
I know, but I just have this feeling that the Dogs are actually crap. Okay.
What are you judging that on 3 losses where they were absolutely embarrassed so far this season?
I'm actually,
including that shit show last couple of days.
Yeah, I'm actually judging it on how poorly we played against them, and we still beat them.
Yeah.
My second one for this week is Josh Kennedy will come back and have a 30-plus possession game, but his disposal efficiency will run at less than 60%.
Less than 60%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are you confusing him with Zach Jones by any chance?
No, I am not.
All right, and number 3, mate?
Number 3, Buddy will kick 4 goals this week.
Oh, mate, every week we have tried to do the buddy predictions and we haven't got them.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to go with it anyway.
So
He'll
far.
kick 4. The reason I'm saying that is I don't think Geelong have a matchup for him, and if they play it right, he should kick 4. He might kick more.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Now, my first one is Gary Rowan, 3 goals.
Okay.
I'm going to look silly if he doesn't travel, but I think he's good for 3 goals.
Mm-hmm.
Second one, winner scores more than 100 points in the Swans Cats game.
That's pretty easy.
Not a margin, but the winner scores more than 100 points. Swans don't look good for that, to be honest. They've not scored much at all this season.
Oh.
So I think it's going to be a bit of a high-scoring game. And number 3, I have been faithful on Brisbane so far this year, but I'm actually going to keep it for this round. And I'm going to say Collingwood by 4 goals.
Collingwood over Richmond.
No. This round. This current round. Anzac Day.
Anzac Day, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a given.
4 goals.
I can tell you what's going to happen now. I think Melbourne will beat Richmond, and I think Collingwood will beat Essendon.
God, that would be a bit of an upset if Melbourne bounce back and beat Richmond after their dreadful performance last week.
That's why I think they'll win.
Look, Stephen, it has been terrific having you on again. Thank you so much for joining me and filling in for our regulars who unfortunately couldn't do it this week.
Not a problem at all. It's great to be back on.
Love having you on, mate. As always, you can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with the tag The Swans Blog. You can always get in touch with us during the week with the hashtag SwansCast. And until next time, go Swans.
Go the Bloods.